Welcome to another episode of WTF Cinema.
Hey everybody, today's episode is another fan request from a completely different fan. That's right, we got two of them now. If we continue at this rate, by next year WTF Cinema will have a dozen fans. A baker's dozen. Anyway, this is Wraith. We open with a bunch of glowing sperm converging to create a Mad Max-looking character and a car in the middle of the desert. This does not bode well for the overall tone of the film. But our story really gets underway when two normal, healthy kids decide to enjoy a night out.
It was a night out they were going to remember for a very long time.
Our couple is stopped out on the road by this local gang, and they're told that they're gonna race for pinks. Now, see, the guy doesn't actually want to race. The gang leader just threatens to have his girlfriend killed if he doesn't race for pinks. Pinks being ownership of the car. See, if he loses the race, he's got to hand over the title to his car, but at least his girlfriend won't get raped. So, this is happening after the apocalypse, right?
Somewhere on the abandoned highways of tomorrow, where law is another word for vengeance.
Because if this is happening in modern day, don't you just go to the cops afterward? Don't you just go to the police and say, hey, look, a bunch of guys threatened my girlfriend's life if I did not race my car with them, and then when they won, by cheating, by the way, they took my car and made me sign over the title or registration or whatever. You signed that over under duress. Under duress, you were forced to enter into an illegal street race and hand over your car. I'm pretty sure that wouldn't stand up in a court of law. I'm just saying, you had a witness to the whole thing too. You had the girlfriend who saw the whole thing. And I'm guessing if these guys do this a lot, which is implied that they do, they probably have a bad reputation around town, so even though there's more gang members than your girlfriend, odds are the jury would find in favor of giving you back your car. Anyway, the guy loses the race, but he gets to keep his girlfriend. Guess there are no cops in this town, huh? Having this illegal street gang racing all the time. Also, these two characters never show up in the movie again, so you can just go ahead and forget about them. So our movie really begins when Charlie Sheen moves into this neighborhood. There go the property values. And he starts flirting with this girl, who it turns out is the love interest of the gang leader. Now, she doesn't like him at all. She's very clear about this. I'm not his girlfriend. He just thinks I am, and I do what he says when he says it because I don't stand up to him and tell him that I'm not his girlfriend. Spiffy. While hanging out at the local lake, we get a nice exposition dump. This Weasley kid comes up to Charlie and tells him, hey, that girl, that love interest over there, she used to date my older brother who was murdered. Nobody really knows for sure who murdered him. Really? We clearly establish everybody in town knows that the gang leader is nuts about this girl. And even the brother there, the Weasley kid, says, don't go near her. He's crazy. He's capable of anything if he thinks somebody's getting between him and her. Wouldn't that make the gang leader the prime suspect in the murder? I mean, I know I'm trying to apply logic to this. But as the movie goes on, people are shocked at the revelation that maybe the gang leader killed him. When really everything about the scream is screaming, murderer, murderer, murderer.
A lot of duck butter out at the lake today, Pack.
Quiff City, here I come.
I have no idea what either of those lines mean. I can't help you. The gang is busy shaking down the local burger shack, as you do, threatening to make more people race them so they can have more cars, when all of a sudden the Wraith's car shows up. And they're all so intrigued by this vehicle they've never seen before, they simply have to race it so they can own it. As the race goes on, the cops actually could become involved near the end. Wait, there are cops in this town? Where have they been this whole time? And the Wraith eliminates its victim. This is how the Wraith eliminates all its victims. It either drives into them, or has them drive into it, it explodes killing them, and then it reforms and drives away. Look, I get it. Explosions are visually interesting. They're cool. I've got the Y chromosome, so it's like, explosions, yeah, brah. But, somehow that just doesn't work for me in this movie. Like, he's out for vengeance. He's here for revenge. Wraiths generally are supposed to suck the life force out of somebody, and instead this guy runs up to them, explodes, and then goes away. Somehow that just isn't exciting for me. What kind of hero just runs up to people, goes kaboom, and then runs away? The chief of police, Randy Quaid, lets the gang know that he's keeping a close eye on them. He's watching them carefully. Really? Then how are they getting away with all of this illegal activity? Randy even says, I know you're high on drugs right now. Why don't you drug test them? Why don't you search their vehicles? If you think you've got a proper reason to suspect they got drugs, you could probably search for it. There are cops in this town. The chief of police knows who this gang is, and still nothing happens to them. This is just so unrealistic. They're not even trying to hide what they do. They're pretty blatant about it. And yet nobody can touch these teenagers. Nobody. That night, we're at a warehouse owned by the gang. Wait, what? They own a warehouse? They own a warehouse full of high-tech toys for building and maintaining their vehicles. How do these teenagers afford this? Now, I know, first thing you're going to say is chop shop, right? They can afford it because they chop up the cars that they steal, essentially, and sell it for parts. But the police are watching them. The chief of police just said, I'm watching you. Got my eye on you. Wouldn't he notice if they were running a chop shop? I mean, I'm sorry, if I'm the chief of police and I'm investigating this gang of teenagers, and I find out they've got a warehouse in town, which can't be that big a secret, especially since the chief of police shows up there later in the movie, the first thing I'd try and investigate is how they got this warehouse. And if it was a chop shop, I'd find out pretty quick. Also, they never address the fact that it's a bunch of teenagers in this movie. They never talk about school. They never have school. They're just running around doing their own thing. So, I mean, I guess it could take place during the summer, right? Except for the fact that we can see people's breath fogging up when they speak in some scenes, but maybe the gang burned down the school, and until the police are able to figure out who it was that burned it down, they won't build a new one. That sounds more in keeping with this movie. Anyway, the Wraith walks into the warehouse with the laser shotgun. And here we're going to do a spoiler. Now, the movie's already dropped sufficient clues for you to pick up on this if you cared. But Charlie Sheen is the Wraith. And the Wraith is that murdered boyfriend slash brother that we mentioned earlier. He came back in a slightly different form. He can't look like himself. He doesn't really say why. He just says, this is as close as I could come back. So he's back in a different body, except he has all the scars from when he was killed, except it's a different body, except it's the same set of scars he got when he was murdered. And anyway, that's not that big a deal. I mean, we saw that coming, right? My problem is, this little toady guy, gang member, he knows who the Wraith is. He recognizes him. Despite the fact that it's a different face, wearing a motorcycle helmet, he later says, I saw his eyes, man. I know it was him. I know who it was. And he's right. The brother never figures out who it is until well after the end of the film. Like, the film ends with the guy just starting to realize, oh, that might have been my brother. The girlfriend takes pretty much till the end of the movie. It has to be revealed to her. Guy has to say, look, I was your lover. I came back from the dead for you. But the Weasley, toady little gang member, he recognizes him. Oh, that's that guy we killed. I recognize his eyes. Now the people who love him, his girlfriend, his own brother, don't recognize him at all. This is my biggest problem with the movie, and we'll address it a little bit more later. Anyway, let's just keep going. The Wraith starts shooting up the warehouse. He never hurts anybody. He shoots up cars and equipment. That's a good way to get revenge. He's scaring them. Good job. Another day, and another member of the gang challenging the Wraith to a race. Only this time, right before they're about to take off, the cops come up. So they're like, oh god, hurry, go, 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 go! Why? If you don't go, 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 the police can't prove you're about to do an illegal street race. They can't. Just because your cars are parked there doesn't mean you're about to race, and you can't be arrested for something you're about to do unless they can prove you were about to do it. And seemingly in this town, you can't get arrested even after you've done something, so I don't really get what all the panic is. And this race ends exactly the same way as the rest of them. Yes, explosions look cool, but you got this neat racing scene, except you know exactly how it's going to end every time. It's going to end with the car exploding and then reforming and driving away. We spent a good chunk of the middle here just working on establishing the love story between Charlie and the love interest. And also the gang trying to figure out who the Wraith is and why he's trying to kill people, and the police trying to get to the bottom of it too. Nobody is successful at this, except the little toady guy who figured it all out in the first place. There is this nice part where the chief of police sits down the surviving gang members and says, look, clearly there's a vigilante trying to kill off the members of your gang. We know this. If you try to get your own justice and kill him before he kills you, I'll make sure you get the death penalty. I'm from Texas, so I could be wrong on this one, but it's my general understanding that if somebody attempts to kill you, and you manage to kill them first, especially while they are in the act of trying to kill you, you get off scot-free. Now, that could just be a Texas thing, but I certainly hope not. The toady tells the rest of the gang members, look, I'm out of here. I quit the gang, alright? This guy is clearly a Wraith. He's the ghost of the guy that we killed. He's back for revenge, and he's trying to kill everybody. Again, he recognized who the Wraith was, despite the girlfriend and brother being incapable of doing so. I wouldn't even bring this up if nobody caught on. Okay, fine, he looks different, nobody catches on. But this weaselly little toady figures it out. And nobody else can. Then the Wraith drives into the warehouse, explodes, killing 2 of the gang members named Skank and Gutter Boy. No, I didn't make those up, that's actually their names in the movie. And then reforms and drives away again. Look, it's a very pretty explosion. But I can't get behind this method of vengeance. It doesn't feel visceral. I mean, it just... I can't get a sense of satisfaction out of the character who just go, I'm gonna drive at you and explode. Toady then explains to Police Chief Randy Quaid about the Wraith. Tells him it's a Wraith. Admits that the gang murdered that boy. To which the chief is surprised and even asks, well, why? Why would the gang leader murder that boy? Everybody in town knows the gang leader's in love with this girl, and the boy was with the girl, and he'll do anything to keep that girl to himself. Everybody in town knows this. In the course of investigating the murder of the boy, did you not think to ask anybody any questions at all that might help you find motive? Despite spending that entire scene saying there's no such thing as ghosts, this is just ridiculous, Randy Quaid pretty much instantly believes in the Wraith from there on out, and even investigates it to try and figure it out. This is also pretty much the end of his story. He's not really part of the big conclusion, and he doesn't do anything up to this point. His character never advances the plot in any way, shape, or form. I don't really know what he's doing there. It almost would have been more believable just not to have cops show up at all. Because he spends most of the movie trying to investigate and trying to figure out what's going on with the Wraith and everything, but we're able to figure it out faster than him. So we have to wait for him to catch up to us, and at that point, he's not helping the plot along, he's an impediment. Just before the final race scene, the love interest tells the gang leader she doesn't love him. And she never will. She's told him this 3 times now. But see, those other times didn't matter. Because this time, she did it right after Charlie Sheen told her she needed to. So this one matters. Because when she was standing up for herself, that was pointless. But once a man tells her to stand up for herself and she does, that counts. And here we go, the final exciting race. Well, it would be exciting if we didn't know exactly how it was going to end. Okay, the explosion thing, I expected. But what was with the flashing back and forth thing? What did he hit? We know the car and the Wraith are two separate entities. We see the Wraith walking around without the car. And later on at the end of the movie, he hands off the car and walks away. So the two are two separate entities. They're not one person. They're not one thing. Now, the person who recommended this film, or I should say requested, because nobody could recommend this. The person who requested this film said that he thought maybe it was trying to communicate that the gang leader knew who the Wraith was. That's why we were seeing the flashes. The gang leader, oh my gosh, it's that kid I killed. I refuse to believe that's what the filmmakers were trying to do. Because if that's what you're trying to do, it failed utterly. Because he doesn't see flashes of the kid he killed. He doesn't see flashes of Charlie Sheen. He sees flashes of the Mad Max-clad Wraith. That doesn't tell us that he knows who that is. It's like all of a sudden, this movie decided it wanted to be deep and artistic. So we're going to start trying to use, like, metaphors in our film? No, pull out, man. It's too late. Just finish this thing. So Charlie pulls up to the girlfriend's place as the Wraith transforms back into Charlie Sheen and says, I can never do that again. Okay. Throughout the movie, they show these little clips of every time he kills somebody, some metal part of his armor disappears, I guess freeing him. But it's never explained to us. And I don't see what the point of these chains that bind him that are being freed when he kills people. I don't know what the point of them is, because we see him as Charlie Sheen throughout the movie, so clearly he can switch back and forth at will. So I don't really know what the point of all that was, and that line of, I can never do that again. Why not? You've been doing it this whole time. But fine. Yeah, he gets the girl, and he goes to his brother and gives his brother the Phantom supercar. This car that came from the afterlife. Gives it to his brother and says, by the way, check the glove box. This car can do special things. So far, the only special thing we've seen this car able to do is explode and reform. Are you telling me he gave his brother a car that could explode and then reform without any harm? This is so stupid. And what about Charlie's parents? Because let's be clear here. Guy died. Teenager died. Was murdered. Came back from the grave so that he could take revenge on the people that killed him, hook up with his girlfriend, and give his brother a super cool car. Never mentions his parents. And as a teenager, your parents are kind of important. Also, the girlfriend goes with him. So, is she running away from home? Are they starting a new life together? Did he get a new social security card when he came back from the dead? Because otherwise he's going to have a hard time establishing an identity and living a life. Or is she going to the afterlife with him? Did she just sign up to die, essentially? And this whole coming back from the dead for revenge thing, I've thought about that for a while. And I've come up with the only theory I think makes sense. See, Charlie Sheen was a child rapist or something. He was a bad person. So when he died, he went to hell. But he cut a deal with the devil. He said, look, you let me go back. You let me get a second chance at life with that girl. And I'll deliver to you the souls of the people who killed me. Huh? You get 4 for 1. That's gotta be pretty good, right? Actually, I think it's 5 for 1. And so the devil said, sure, and gave him a super cool car and said, go explode, my son. And so he came back to wreak his vengeance. And he killed 5 people so that he could be back with his girlfriend. It's really the only thing that makes sense out of this plot. So we're basically rooting for a damned soul. That's all I can do with this movie. It's the only thing that makes sense. Anyway, in conclusion, the movie is fairly forgettable. It's not that great. At its very best, it makes me want to go watch Mad Max instead. So I'll leave you with that. See you next time.
Thank you for watching WTF Cinema. Until next time, what the f***, man?